Thank you. Before I formally start the meeting, I confirm that this meeting is being held in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and the Licensing Act Hearing Regulations 2005, which allow councils to make their own arrangements for licensing subcommittees to hear matters in connection with premises licences. Please note the following points with regard to the conduct of this meeting. The Council is video and audio streaming this meeting live on the internet and making a recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the Council's website. Please remember that what you do and say in this meeting has a global reach and your words and actions should be chosen carefully. And please ensure all mobile devices are switched to silent. If any remote attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue. If you plan to leave before the end of the meeting, please can you indicate this in advance. Are there any questions about the procedures before we continue? Everybody right? I'll carry on. I will begin by introducing the subcommittee members, officers who will be present throughout the meeting. I am the chair, Councillor Andrews. To my left are Councillors Peter Hamlin and Councillor David Davis. To my right is the legal advisor to the committee, Mr. Davis, and the clerk to the subcommittee, who I think you've all spoken to, is Mr. Evans. Other attendees will be introduced at relevant stages of the meeting. Any apologies for absence? No. No substitutes. Are there any declarations for items on the agenda today? Could you please do this by raising your hand, and then I will ask you to speak to notify the meeting which item you have an interest in and the nature of that interest. No? No. None. This application is for the grant of a premises licence in respect of Nostock, Rowden Paddocks, Winslow, Bromyard, HR7 4LS under the Licensing Act 2003. And the purpose is to consider a grant of a premises licence in respect of Nostock, Rowden Paddocks, Winslow, Bromyard, HR7 4LS under the Licensing Act 2003. Please can I remind speakers that you are limited to 10 minutes to make your submission to the subcommittee. Please could I ask that you avoid repeating points that have already been made by other speakers. In the event that speakers repeat points that are already raised, I will ask you to move on to the next point in your submission. And could I also take this opportunity to point out that highways and parking and transport are not within the remit of this committee. We have the orders of speakers. Number one, Emma Bowell. Unfortunately, Emma, who is the licensing officer, is unwell, so that Mr. Evans will read her submission for you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for a grant of a premises licence in respect of Nostock, Rowden Paddocks, Winslow, Bromyard, HR7 4LS under the Licensing Act 2003. Recommendations. That the subcommittee determine the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives in the overall interests of the local community. It should give appropriate weight to A. The steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, B. The representations, including supporting information, presented by all parties, C. The guidance issued to local authorities under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and D. The Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025. The reasons for these recommendations are that they ensure compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. Alternative options. There are a number of options open to the subcommittee. A. Grant the licence subject to conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application and the mandatory conditions set out in the Licensing Act 2003. B. Grant the licence subject to modified conditions to that of the operating schedule where the subcommittee considers it appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and add mandatory conditions set out in the Licensing Act 2003. C. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates. D. To refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor, that's DPS, or E. To refuse the application. Key considerations. Licence application. The application for the grant of a premises licence has received relevant representations and is therefore brought before the subcommittee for determination. Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025 states, all representation must be relevant. For example, they must be about the likely effect of the grant of the application. This followed paragraph 8.57 in the S182 guidance, which uses the same wording. The details of the application are: applicant, Nostoc Limited. Type of application, grant. Date received, 19th of May 2025. 28-day consultation started, 20th of May 2025. 28-day consultation ended, 16th of June 2025. Summary of application. The application, which is contained in Appendix 1 to the report, requests a new premises licence for the following licensable activities: live music, indoors, outdoors, Monday to Thursday, 12 noon to 2200 hours, Friday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m., Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Recorded music, indoors and outdoors, Monday to Thursday, 12 noon to 10 p.m, Friday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m, Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. Anything similar to live recorded music and performance of dance, indoors, outdoors, Monday to Thursday, 12 noon to 10 p.m, Friday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Late night refreshment, indoors and outdoors, Friday to Sunday, 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. Sale and supply of alcohol, consumption on the premises, Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. till midnight, Friday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. The premises licence will only be used for events totalling 5 and no more than 10 days. Please note, under the Live Music Act 2012 as amended, an alcohol licensed premises can have live and or recorded music from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. for up to 500 people without the need for these activities to be on a premises licence. Late night refreshment, sale supply of hot food and or hot drinks is only applicable between Monday to Sunday, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Summary of representations. 2 representations were received from the responsible authorities, West Mercia Police, Trading Standards. The conditions proposed by both responsible authorities have been agreed with the applicant and can be found at Appendices 2 and 3 of the report. 16 relevant representations have been received from members of the public, which the licensing authority have accepted as being relevant. These representations can be found at Appendix 4 of the report. 8 letters that were in support of the application were received during the consultation period from members of the public. These can be found at Appendix 5 of the report. 1 representation was received from a member of the public but was rejected by the licensing authority as not being relevant, but has been kept on file. 4 further letters of support were received from members of the public, which were received after the consultation period had concluded and therefore have been kept on file. Please note, the licensing subcommittee cannot consider increased traffic or wildlife issues in determining the application in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003. History. Between 2006 and 2024, Nostoc Limited have applied for and have been granted 18 occasional premises licences for an annual festival. During this time, the licensing authority have received no complaints from any of the responsible authorities or members of the public. The impacts and implications concerning the community, environment, equality duty, resources, financial, legal and risk management have been considered in the production of this report and are summarised on pages 14 to 17. The report also provides detail of the right of appeal. Details of this appear under the relevant section in the report on page 16. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. We will now go to the speakers, the objectors, starting first with Dr. Gail Ashton.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I do so alongside two other objectors and on behalf of a not insignificant section of our community. Some of the issues I hope to raise this afternoon may well be taken up later. This is not to repeat, I hasten to add, but to focus and evidence a broader sense of what might bear upon the current application today. As such, I shall primarily address the major concern for most people, which is the impact on public amenity. In so doing, I draw upon a 2019 case involving Crumplebury Farm Events venue, specifically some exemplary details from their noise management plan. I do so in the full awareness that planning legislation is far stricter than licensing policy. Nevertheless, I'm sure everyone would agree that as a community, we are all bound, residents, committee, applicants alike, to collaborate towards a considered and satisfactory outcome. And that outcome must take into account overriding principles in the National Planning Policy and Herefordshire's Local Plan Core Strategy 2011-231, as Mr. Evans has already indicated. With that in mind, we contend that the current noise management plan submitted quite late on by the applicants lacks considered step-by-step detail and does not adequately address either those principles or local concerns. Perhaps the greatest challenge in defining noise as a public nuisance is the lack of prescribed methodology for its assessment for the entertainment industry. This means that it's often a complex and contentious issue which demands robust, even creative response from all concerned. Noise levels, timings and frequency of events are fundamental issues on this application. As I said, I'm going to address noise today. The location of Rowden Paddocks is a beautiful and tranquil one. Noise travels far, especially at night. It is affected too by atmospheric conditions and wind direction. As such, it is probably not at all helpful to dismiss some responses about sound from one section of our locality as, I quote, not valid. Local amenity is in fact at the heart of HLP core strategy and must satisfy policies SS6 and SD1 of that document. Similarly, the National Planning Policy Framework enshrines the need for events to be commensurate with location and setting. Special consideration should be afforded to likely and cumulative effects of noise on health, living conditions, the natural world, especially in sensitive locations such as Rowden Paddocks. The grant of application at Crumplebury Farm was for a wedding and events venue set like this one in rolling countryside and yet within earshot of residents. Please note that Crumplebury Farm is an indoor venue only. This application here is for indoors and outdoors, as far as we can see, outdoors in the main, and it involves music, plus weddings and private events, which incidentally do not bring so much economic benefit to local retailers or enhance the cultural amenity of local residents. This is, after all, not Nostoc, but a new, more flexible model of working. As such, the resolution achieved by the applicants, the committee here today, and locals at planning and locals at Crumplebury is even more pertinent here. And I offer it today as a proven working model that has considerably more detail than the applicant's NMP, as follows. Number one, sound levels. You will hear a little bit more about this later, I think, but Crumplebury, which again is inside, not outside, and also has acoustic protection, was set at 85 decibels, reduced on appeal. We will argue a little bit later that Rowden Paddocks levels are, we feel, unreasonable, while some events will also take place during the day. Point two, There is no amplified music at all outside at Crumplebury. Inside it ends, as we argue it should, on the stroke of 11 p.m, to be followed by an hour of refreshment and chill zone until midnight. Again, we'll expand on this later, but if I could record here, as we all know, the standard curfew for outdoors licensed events is 11 p.m. or earlier, with only exceptional extensions until midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. And as far as I'm aware, that includes everything, events, food, and so on. That's all within national and local guidelines. When considering such extensions, as would apply to this particular application, noise and disruption become crucial, together with the impact on the surrounding area. So any deviation from that 11 p.m. curfew must be justifiable and evidenced. With that in mind, and given the objections and concerns currently exercising this committee, we respectfully suggest that the Crumplebury model is at best an eminently reasonable outcome in such an instance. Number 3 expands on the point about music and noise. Fireworks and Chinese lanterns are expressly forbidden to prevent noise and light pollution, a further compromise. Number 4, all sound is subject to strict control. Now, that's not just its noise levels, but the technology to produce it, with an extensive technical guide produced for all clients and anyone involved at the Crumplebury events venue. And that includes too an insistence that bands and DJs may only use in-house technology to minimize feedback and so on. There is also an automatically generated cutoff point when sound reaches the maximum pillated level. As you will see from a number of objections on this particular application and from previous Nostoc events, which I accept are not the same as here, DJ sets have been reported as being especially intrusive. Another point, there are clearly displayed signs and contracts for behaviour at Crumplebury. They call these house rules. These demand that clients adhere to local and national legislation and guidelines regarding noise. And in that instance, they are described as this. They are to respect and preserve the right to peace for all neighbours, quote, human or animal. They must respect amenity by avoiding such matters as shouting, singing, chanting. They should avoid disturbance as far as possible when leaving premises, for example, by pre-booking taxis. Finally, Rowden Paddocks, we feel, has a wholly inadequate plan for monitoring complaints. In contrast, Crumplebury NMP is exemplary. It has a hotline and/or a contact form. That contact form logs details that are extensive, not just the nature of the complaint, but it should record weather and wind conditions. That log is also made available to all other authorities on demand. Those complaints at Crumplebury are investigated independently, not by anyone employed by the venue, and they are then compared to their own events managers' frequently recorded sound levels. They specify on their plan how often and when that's actually done. I'm not going to take up any more time about this because my colleagues are going to expand on our objections and some of these points. But I'd like to finish by noting this, if I may. What we are going to contend, and what I've tried to contend just by giving you those instances, is that this is what a robust, evidenced, and above all, an objective NMP looks like. It might be worth noting that the issues about Crumplebury and about noise specifically went to planning appeal after numerous complaints, and environmental health was involved, the council was involved, and so on. So the conditions and the features that I'm describing here were actually imposed upon Crumplebury, and I would contend there would be no need for that in this instance if you perhaps take into account some of the things that I've been saying here. Above all, I feel that the Crumplebury case sets a precedent for venues across Herefordshire. It adheres to legislation, it works towards harmonious resolution, it respects those rights that I've talked about, enshrined in policy of local amenity. It is above all an exemplary model of good practice, and we feel very much that currently that is not the case on this particular application for a licence. As you have already said, there are many options for the committee to take today. There is no doubt that some objectors might wish that this application is rejected in its entirety. We would hope that we could at least achieve a resolution that is constructive and considered. And so we respectfully urge you to make a decision today on the basis of something that safeguards public amenity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I simply comment, I would know the comparable site, and it's a very different kind of business. Next is Mr. Baltrop.
Mr. Baltrop, if you'd like to unmute yourself, please, sir. Sorry, Mr. Baltrop, you are still on mute.
See the button now. I beg your pardon. I'm sorry to hold the meeting up. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Hear you loud and clear. Please proceed.
Thank you. Once again, I'd like to start by pointing out that although the former Nostock Festival is repeatedly referred to by the applicant, this application is for a completely separate series of ongoing events in a schedule which the applicant admitted at a public meeting is likely to expand. The nature of the events proposed in this application is quite different from that festival. However, community members must base their concerns and objections on past experience of events on the same land and operated by the same people, experience which doesn't always inspire confidence. Local people were tolerant because Nostock, the festival, was an annual short-term one-off. People's forbearance and noise and disruption once a year does not equate to forbearance of regular ongoing noise into the late night and early morning. What is planned now is a constant series of events imposed in an unsuitable location. The proposed events are akin to establishing an entertainment venue in an otherwise peaceful rural environment, and it is this concept which arouses serious alarm as well as wider implications regarding council policy. The council's website gives standard days and timings for licensed hours. I won't read them all out, but the latest is 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. It's usually 11 p.m. That seems more suitable. The applicant seems almost to celebrate exceeding licensing terms at previous events on this site. They say on their website, "We have no problem with artists playing longer than their agreed set time." Well, sorry, but we do. If a license holder exceeds the agreed times, they are in breach. The council's own licensing conditions state that noise and vibration shall not emanate from the premises so as to cause a disturbance. Based on those acknowledged past failings, it's impossible that the stated levels are being adhered to. The proposed events are said to be smaller in terms of numbers attending. However, I suggest it's unlikely that smaller PA systems are proposed. A strong probability of disturbance continues. The prevention of public nuisance legislation stated by the Licensing Committee, the Convention of Human Rights, and the Licensing Act 2003 all codify the requirement to respect people's rights. The legislation enshrines that people come before profit. The rights of residents must be acknowledged over an assumed right to activity which will cause disturbance. A commercial event, in this case a series of events, must not be allowed to trample the private individual's right to, quote, their own enjoyment of their own property and land. In addition to quality of life, these proposals will impact work and livelihoods. Such continued outdoor events with loud amplified music until perhaps 2 a.m. will be a huge disturbance to work, leisure and sleep. And in that regard, the effect on children is relevant. Protection of children from harm must surely include being kept awake until the small hours, 3 nights in a row, including the night before a school day. That also applies re adults' preparedness or fitness to work safely, especially those whose working and resting hours are themselves regulated. For example, professional drivers who must ensure the safety of others as well as themselves. Monitoring is offered. Well, this should be at points agreed with the community rather than, as suggested, those selected by the applicant. It should be carried out independently and objectively, not by someone associated with or employed by the event organisers and who therefore has a vested interest. I suggest that to ensure objectivity, the Council's own specialist officers should be the ones to undertake monitoring at points agreed in discussion with the community. I'd like to ask precisely what is intended to be the on the spot response at the time of a complaint. What exactly is meant by immediate action will be taken? Vague promises are not the right answers. This needs writing down. The solution to some of these concerns may be a compromise. For example, strict adherence to the levels quoted in the noise management plan and access to an independent assessment, perhaps the Council's own officers as suggested above, plus a more equitable finishing time of 11 p.m. in keeping with similar indoor and outdoor events already licensed by this authority. I note that the application is based on a maximum number of operating days. Those days include proposed operation after midnight. I point out that a new and additional day begins from midnight. A day ends, a new day begins. Please be aware that operation after that moment reduces the number of remaining available days. Since licensing policy assumes that any necessary planning requirements have been satisfied, I trust that the applicants have dealt with this matter. If not, I can only suggest that the application may be out of order and if so, should be withdrawn. But I do hope we can come to some sort of compromise which recognises the needs of the applicants in their business, but also respects and recognises the needs and rights of the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baltrop. Next, we have Dr. Lee O'Mara.
Yeah, I haven't put my name forward actually to speak today. So my three colleagues are representing us all, and we have corroborated with each other, and they'll be representing my feelings as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, unfortunately it froze.
I just said thank you, Dr. O'Mara, since you don't wish to speak. And next one is Sarah Pantling.
No, the same here. That Sarah's name wasn't put forward to speak today. We just submitted our own objections to the plan as it stands at the moment, but we weren't going to speak this afternoon.
Thank you for letting us know. Mr. Davis, are you wishing to speak, or are you also just a participant in the?
Can you just unmute yourself, please, Mr. Davis?
Headphone speakers.
You can be heard now. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak today on the issue that is such a great importance to the community. I would like to start by saying how valuable many have felt that previous Nostoc events have been for the area, and would. Sorry? No, I'm not now. You can hear me now, can't you? Sorry.
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah. been in there, and would thank Pete Nosworthy and his family for their valuable contribution to the community in the past. However, we are here today to discuss the impact on the community of the new proposals going forward for a diverse range of events over a wider time frame at Rowden Paddocks. I'm representing those amongst us in the community who feel that there are concerns, particularly around noise and vibration and their impact on quality of life, health, and ability to run their businesses. Further, should the proposals be approved, I want to address the need for concrete information, clarity, and as much advance notice as possible regarding proposed events, avoiding the informality, vagueness, and very open-ended nature of the current proposal scenario. So firstly, on the issue of noise, Mr. Nosworthy at a previous meeting assured us and myself directly that going forward, after the one-day event on the 19th, that we would be unable to hear the noise or vibration from any future events. However, we are aware of the existing amplification capability of the equipment at Rowden Paddocks, and we find it difficult to accept that this will not be used in events going forward. We have concerns that this assurance not transpire, and we are faced with the unreasonable situation of being surrounded by noise and vibration. What clear protocols can the council offer us for immediate resolution of excessive nuisance? We're aware that the council has a range of accepted decibel levels dependent upon the environment, event times and dates. We are also aware that Rowden Paddocks have employed someone to oversee these levels on behalf of them. We very much feel that such testing should be independent of Rowden Paddocks, perhaps overseen by yourselves, the council, or alternatively independent testing to avoid a bias. There are many of us within the community who would be happy to be designated testing stations, including myself, as I live literally a few hundred yards up the road. I would draw the panel's attention to the fact that the demographic of our community is predominantly retirement age and above. Evidence exists to show that beat music in elderly populations can correlate with more outcomes in cardiac health. Further, poor quality of sleep is shown and correlate with certain health issues generally. In addition, businesses that run within the peaceful rural community that rely on such peace and tranquility cannot operate when events such that cause noise and vibration are in progress, whether this be day or evening. This brings me to my second point, the issue of our need as a community for easier access to clear concrete information and reliable knowledge regarding the dates and times of all the events. This will enable us to plan our social and professional activities. As it currently stands, there are only requirements for 1 month's notice and planned events up to 150 people and 3 months for over 500 people. This includes staff. This means that this means that anyone that has organised an important social professional event may find it clashes with the date that suddenly appears in Rowden Paddocks' diary. This will lead to inconvenience and distress if there is an unacceptable levels of noise. Or stress if there is, we've been promised there won't be. Businesses that rely on peaceful and tranquil surroundings and publish their event calendars up to a year in advance will experience uncertainty and need to reschedule events at a short notice, leading to customer perception of unreliability and lack of professionalism, and the impact considerably on income. Such businesses operate at evenings and weekends, and impact will be devastating. Boundaries regarding periods of notice of impending events are needed. Longer than 1 month in all cases, and rigorous adherence to hours of opening is observed. In addition, our understanding is that there is proposed up to 10 one-day events if event goes on past 12 o'clock, which was mentioned earlier, then it becomes a 2-day event. Clearly, this needs to be taken into account. We know that the consensus for smaller events around the area is finishing at 11 o'clock. We would ask why Rowden Paddock may be offered the opportunity to finish much later in the earlier comments by the council. In particular, there is a concern that the Sunday evening of an event may stretch till the early hours of the Monday morning. This would have a significant impact on members of the community that are still working. Um, I would just like to say, from a personal note, I want this to try and work for both parties. If we can talk and try and come to some uh, agreement with everything, but we need to be honest and no exaggerations, because it doesn't help if people are exaggerating and lying when we know that's not the case. I've lived here for 25 years and I've had a fantastic time. But when I moved into the area, I knew I was moving into an agricultural area, moving from, like many of us do, moving from the town. I knew when we moved into this area that we're moving into an agricultural area, so we have to take on what happens in agricultural areas, i.e., tractors, mud on the road, lights in the fields till early hours. And I am more than happy that this is what happens. If you move to the country, this is what you accept. You've chosen to move to the country, you have to take on country life. But unfortunately, this appears to be outside of what we used to. This is a private entrepreneur business. I really hope that we can try and resolve it, and we need to talk to Mr. Nostock's family and try and resolve it so as we can agree to have some sort of resolutions from this, because I do believe that Nostock's previous events were brilliant for the area. They brought a lot of business into the area and lots of other add-ons that come to it. But we all agreed it was once a year. Now, unfortunately, with the idea of it going over up to 10 days, we're all, and I'm sure you can understand, we're all very concerned that if this was to carry on the way that we think it could carry on, it would be a little bit unbearable. But as Mr. Nosworthy said, we won't hear it. So I am just a little bit concerned that we will hear it, and I think that's the worry of the people in the area. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I think next we have Heather Brown, who is speaking on behalf of Joanna May.
Well, thank you for listening. I won't waste your time because the points that I was going to raise have been eloquently spoken already, and I feel I would just be repeating myself. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I don't think so at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Right. I'll move on to the applicants. Mr. Phipps, you're the applicant's agent, I believe.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I am. Would you like me to start?
Yes, I would, please. Sorry.
Thank you. Council, you will find within the supplementary papers at small index 2, the materials that we have produced in support of our application. What I propose to do is just canter you through those papers. I'm not going to take you through, you'll be pleased to know, either line by line or paragraph by paragraph, but hopefully it will be helpful just to have those, I suspect, on screen with you as I address you. So first of all, there is a written submission that sets out what we have to say. And what I'm trying to do in my 10 minutes is identify 12 points that we say are of significance, which you will find both within the submission and the supporting materials. So the first point is that it is right that the business is slightly pivoting itself. It has been a 4-day festival for 26 years, has had a license granted pretty much COVID, I think, the exception every year through the course of the Licensing Act 2003. Events will be smaller moving forwards. It's right that there will be more days on which there may be events, but we say that the nature of the events changing is entirely appropriate, both with the business and with the licensing objectives. There is within the papers a comprehensive operating schedule running to a significant number of conditions covering all of the licensing objectives. And that is an operating schedule that has been developed both with officers and experience. And you will see within the papers that there were a couple of finesses proposed by both your trading standards and police licensing officers, all of which has been agreed. There is also within the papers an event management plan in line with both your policy requests and with best practice. And that is a document that is shared with, deliberated with, considered by the Safety Advisory Group, who comprise officers that extend beyond the responsible authorities concerned with licensing matters specifically. And you will note that none of the officers, whether Safety Advisory nor responsible authorities, object to this application at all. And we say that is a point of some significance when you come to deliberate in due course. Noise management is a particular point, and we recognise that it is a concern. You will see that there is a noise management plan. You will see that, or you may perhaps not be aware, but that has been submitted both to Safety Advisory Group and Environmental Health, who do not make a representation. They don't even make a comment about the improvement, amendment or finesse of the noise management plan. And I'll ask you to bear that in mind when you reflect on some of the comments made by objectors about the necessity for independent assessment. We say this is a perfectly legitimate document. It covers and touches on both internal and external monitoring of noise levels. It provides for actions to be taken if concerns are identified, and it provides for a complaint line very much in line with points raised to you early on. And you'll have the comment, no doubt, at the forefront of your mind that Mr. Evans made, that there have been no complaints in preceding years about the operations on site from these same applicants. The objections cover a number of points, but I will address you on those if I may. The first is Crumpleberry. I can't pretend that I can tell you anything about Crumpleberry. I know nothing of it and had no knowledge that that would be raised today. But what I can say is that you will be familiar with the principle of each application being considered on its individual merits. That's page 13 of your licensing policy and the national guidance. There was some reference to it setting a precedent. There is no such procedure in licensing. Each application on its individual merits by its very nature is in conflict with the suggestion of precedent. All of the references to Crumpleberry seemed to be about planning, which is entirely separate legislation, about which again the guidance and your policy make specific reference. And I noted that there was also reference to the engagement of environmental health in Crumpleberry. I make no adverse comment about Crumpleberry, but you'll note that that's not the position here. And so I'm afraid that takes you no further whatsoever in terms of your determination, I would suggest. Some of the criticisms are about the open-ended nature of the application. It is not an open-ended application. As Mr. Evans also kindly advised, 5 events over no more than 10 days, with the event management plan, with the conditions, with the safety advisory group engagement throughout. It may have some flexibility about it, but it is flexibility with control and supervision at all times. And I make the obvious point that the supervision does not stop today. The supervision continues after today in the run up to each and or any particular event that may be undertaken on site. In the written representations, there were a number of points of concern about alcohol management. That's not been a theme this morning, but I would invite your attention toward the event management plan, the conditions, the trading standards representation, the letter that was sent to all the objectors, the experience document that we provided, providing detail about our designated premises supervisor who's undertaken that role for the past 15 years. Also mention was made of antisocial behavior in the written representations, not really touched on today. There are 2 security companies, experience touched on in the document. They're specifically referenced as policies and procedures in the event management plan, and the absence of the police representation, who your own policy and indeed the national guidance paragraph 912 specifically identify as being the experts in terms of crime and disorder, is, I say, a point of very great significance. Reference also to tranquility from a number of the representatives this morning and in the written representations. I'm sorry to be so bold about this, but tranquility is not a licensing objective. We are, none of us here today, seeking to preserve tranquility, nor are the applicants seeking to adversely impact anyone at all, but tranquility and its protection, a little like wildlife, whilst entirely appropriate, laudable, and something that we would pride ourselves in doing our best to deliver, it is not a consideration that is legitimate in the context of an application for a premises license. Your own licensing policy does touch on, however, the significant positive contribution that well-managed licensed premises make to the wider objectives, including the economic ones as well as cultural ones. And we say that these premises, these proposals, this applicant, all of the consultants and all of the events and activities specifically address that policy ambition. The proof of, if you will, the legitimacy of the applicant is touched on in the submissions. I've made reference to the award-winning nature of the operations. Herefordshire Business Awards, an example of something where the authority and the locality have themselves specifically recognised us. It seems, if I may say so, to boil down to risk and concern. We are, of course, respectful that as we change our business model, change generates anxiety. But I do ask you to look at all of the documents, all of the materials, all of the experience, all of the comments or candidly lack of them from the officers, to offer you the confidence that we say that you can take to the granting of this application, safe in the knowledge that we will deliver to the licensing objectives. That there may be some impact, of course we recognise that. I appreciate traffic is not a concern, but there may well be more cars or deliveries on the road, but we will manage that as we have always sought to do, to the very best standard that we have delivered, that allows your democratic service officer to say there have been no historic complaints at all. And the final point is this: the suggestion seems to be from many of those who spoke today that there is a silent minority of objection to these proposals. We simply do not accept that at all. You will see within the papers that there are support representations from a number. There are some representations served out.
Mr. Phipps, I think you've come to the end of your 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Councillor Hamlin, you wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps, for very professional report there. I think we must take on board your comments about the change in the business model generating anxiety. It occurs to me that a lot of the objections are based on or around that sort of thing. Secondly, I'd like to mention Crumplebury. I know where Crumplebury is and I know what it is. I don't think that we can afford to give any weight to arguments that compare this with Crumplebury. It's a completely different style of business. Thirdly, can you maybe clarify 5 events totaling no more than 10 days? A couple of speakers so far have said if an event sneaks over into the next day, does that take up 2 days? If it's within the licensed hours that finish at, for instance, 1 in the morning, does that 1 hour make it a 2-day event? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll deal with those in order, if I may. In terms of the anxiety point, obviously you heard what I have to say, but I think that the point from a licensing objectives position is that if one were to determine license applications on the basis of anxiety, risk or concern, no licensing applications would ever be granted. And I don't just mean in the context of premises that may have operations that are outside as well as inside or be for larger capacities than smaller cafe style premises. That would be all licensed premises, because licensing by its very nature generates a concern. That's why we have a regulation in the first place. So it is about the likelihood of the risk materializing that is, I respectfully suggest, and perhaps your legal officer will come to agree, is the critical consideration. And that's why we touch on the issue of the history of what you have experience of with these applicants. In terms of Crumplebury, if I might, I will just slightly disagree respectfully with you in this way. Even if Crumplebury was a premises that was a perfect mirror of this premises, this application, this operation, it would still not be a legitimate comparator, is I suppose the point that I would make, because if it were, then each application on its individual merits principle would rather fall over. And in the context of the hour, that's not previously been my interpretation at all, and it's not my understanding it's been anybody else's from the applicant's perspective. If there are activities at 8 p.m. that finish at 1 a.m., my understanding is that's 1 day, and it hasn't been my understanding that that would fairly be considered to be 2 days. I'll stand corrected if my clients tell me otherwise, but my view is that's 1 day.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. I think we now go on to Mr. Peter Nosworthy, who's the Managing Director.
Councillor Andrews, thank you very much. The applicants are represented by me, and although there are a number of us here today, it is not proposed that everyone who is appearing for and on behalf of the applicants will be allotted a 10-minute slot. I'm hoping, frankly, you'll all be relieved to hear that. If the view of the committee is that each of the applicant attendees were to have 10 minutes, then candidly, I would have probably spoken for a little longer than my allotted 10, but that was not the proposal. Whilst there may be questions, of course, I'm the proposed speaker.
So I'm very happy that you're going to speak on your 10 minutes on behalf of you all. Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure.
Right, I do have a first question. What has been some comments about lack of consultation with members of the community. Now, I understand that you have made efforts to speak to members of the community. Can you confirm that that is so?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Yes, to be fair, I didn't pick up that that was too strong a point made earlier, but to be clear, but in your papers in the first supplementary pack is a comprehensive letter that the applicant sent through the authority who helpfully circulated it to everybody who had made a representation, and that arose effectively from a meeting between a number of the parties. I cannot say that every single objector attended that meeting, but there was what you councillors perhaps would be familiar with, a town hall meeting where there was a sort of Q&A and a chat about everything. And so, no, I couldn't accept that there's any failing to engage. I ought to also add, and it's a point, to be fair, that was touched on by one of the speakers, nor will there be any failing to engage hereafter. We are entirely committed to, as was touched on by a number of the objectors, doing our level best to work with everyone as best we're able to satisfy them. And you will have seen that there are proposals that we provide, details about events that are more than 500, less than 500 in what we consider to be fair timetables. Appreciate that doesn't satisfy everyone, but I'm afraid we can't offer to give a 12-month notification of any event that may occur because the event may simply not have been booked and or confirmed at that time. But we've no resistance to engaging, and whether that's with your officers, the safety advisory group, police, etc., but also with the residents direct.
Thank you. Can I also clarify that you will have a telephone number that is made available to every member of the community that they can contact you if they feel that the noise or anything else is disturbing them during your events?
Yes, in its simplest form, yes, is the only correct answer to that. We are entirely content to do that, and as you will have seen from some of the noise materials and the submissions, what is proposed, which is best practice and in line with every, as far as I'm certainly aware, large-scale event, we will then task someone to attend the complainant or the aggrieved person's location, undertake an assessment, and if there is any concern, attend to it immediately by way of radio and telephone communications to address the point of concern. So there is no resistance to that at all.
Thank you. I have down to speak Mr. Gawain Bowl, who is the security manager. Are you there?
Same point, Councillor Andrews. Actually, if it's our security manager, and indeed Russell Holden, who's our noise manager, is I think also identified as being in attendance rather than as identified as speakers. I'm representing the applicants. They are just here to observe, really.
Thank you. Committee, have you any questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you. On the noise management plan, I know the chair's already clarified that you're going to provide a number, and you've stated that. Can I just ascertain whether or not that number will be a fixed number for the duration of all the events, i.e. a mobile phone number or whatever that will be controlled and logged, just so that we have that clarity? And at what point will that number be promulgated amongst the locals so that they can be aware of it?
Thank you, Councillor. I think that the straight answer to the first question as to whether it will always be the same phone number, it's fair to say that I can't give you an answer to that. Happy to be corrected, but I think it's fair to say there's the possibility that that would change. But it would be provided before any activities take place on site at all, and it would continue and be monitored and able to be answered the entire time that activities are being conducted, and it would continue until all activities have concluded. Were the number to change, then the new number would be identified in advance of any future events. If the number wasn't to change, then we'd take the notification for the original number as being live.
Thank you for that.
I think Councillor Davis did ask, will all the complaints be logged? Any complaints that are made, will they be logged?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's effectively part of the noise management. If it, presuming for the moment, Councillor, it was a noise issue, it would be part and parcel of the noise management protocol that we would do an assessment of complaints at the end of the event.
Thank you. Committee, have you any other questions you wish to ask?
I don't think so.
Right. Mr. Davis, our legal advisor wishes to clarify a point.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I just wanted to clarify, I think, because it is quite important to the application. Obviously, it states quite clearly in the application that it will be 5 and no more than 10 days. But I think the point raised by Councillor Hamblin about whether an event goes on past midnight is a key point. I want to sort of clarify how will you ensure you won't exceed the 10-day limit that you've stated in the application.
Well, we obliged to engage with your officers, both the Safety Advisory Group, licensing, police and so forth, hereafter in the run-up to and in the conduct of any activities. They would be notified precisely of when events were taking place. If the concern was that we were likely to be deceitful, then we can happily provide a record at the end of each year of days and times on which we operated, but I'm bound to say that would obviously already be known by your licensing service, the police and others.
Thank you.
Other Pardon? I can't see.
Mr. O'Mara has his hand up.
Mr. O'Mara, did you?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I wanted just to respond to what Mr. Phipps has said. The point we're trying to make as objectives is not related to security and other issues that he talks about as far as Nostock is concerned, like the sale of alcohol and behaviour. Is it purely the noise? And I go back to the noise management plan. I've looked at the decibel thresholds, 65 decibels reducing to 45 and then 40 as time goes on. What I can't understand, if they were held at those threshold levels, we should not hear them. I have machinery that I use in my garden, which is louder than that. And I'm sure Rowden Paddocks doesn't hear that. Plus, I'm not using it at 2 a.m. in the morning when the noise is far more amplified. And the reason why we asked for an independent assessment is that we just don't feel reassured by going on past behaviour, what we can hear from Nostock, that these are adhered to rigorously. The noise levels that are stated in there, we should not hear at all. And yet we've all been kept awake until the early hours. And this does have an impact on trying to work the next day. And we were also told that there would not be any events going on longer than 1 day. And yet we already see there's a booking for a private birthday party, which is going to be over 3 days, ending at the same time as Nostock festivals, presumably with music and entertainment again. And so this is, at the meeting that we held in the village hall, we were assured that this would not take place, and yet that has gone on. So our issue is mainly to do with some of the vague natures that we've been given verbal assurance about, and the change in those, but particularly about noise levels. We think it's laudable that there is a plan that's been put in place, a management plan, but our main concern is about the noise and the impact it has on people living in the locality. Thank you.
Someone else.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Presumably, Councillor, you'd like me to answer that question?
Yes.
Thank you. So just dealing with it, the reason that I addressed the committee on the issues of alcohol management and antisocial behaviour is that is in significant part referenced in the representations that are written, and the committee are perfectly entitled to consider the written representations. It is not just the points that are raised during the hearing, and although the focus, I entirely accept today from those who've spoken today, has been about noise, there are a number of other issues raised about alcohol, about children and so forth. And so I felt that it was incumbent on me to address the committee to all of the licensing objectives that had been raised against the application. In the context of the um, noise levels that are set out in the noise management plan, all I'm afraid I can really say is that this has been circulated to the environmental health officer, as has the application, and to the safety advisory group, and it has drawn no adverse objection from what could fairly be described as the experts. And as I say, I can only repeat the point that we are entirely mindful to ensure that we best minimise our impact on all residents, near and far. But insofar as the noise management plan itself is concerned, it has met with all of officer approval as far as candidly any of us can see.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. Is there someone else with a raised hand I can see? Hi.
Yes. Yeah, B. My hand.
Is it this? Is that
Ashton?
Dr. Gail Ashton? Is that right?
Yes, please. Dr. Ashton, yes, thank you. My question is actually quite a simple one, if I may. I would like you to consider this following scenario according to your noise management plan. It's 2 a.m. in the morning and I ring your dedicated hotline. And I live in an all-female household at the end of an unauthorised private track, which actually means you have no public or vehicular right of access at my track in order not to disturb my very elderly residents, neighbours, some of whom live alone. But I call you at 2 o'clock in the morning to tell you that I think you are disturbing my sleep. And your answer to me is, and it's meant to reassure me, and I'd like to know how, that you're going to come up and measure the noise levels. Crumplebury as a model, which I raised, you have dismissed as a committee. I raised it as an exemplary model of a noise management plan, and their details that I put there, however different that venue, I think still stands in this scenario. But I would like Mr. Phipps to tell me how I am to be reassured as a woman at 2 o'clock in the morning when I make that call.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Ashton. Very helpful of you to flag that to us. The licensing policy, and indeed I think the comment of the chair earlier, is that we are all wanting to be as cooperative and collaborative as we possibly can be with one another in order to best deliver the sort of competing elements here. If your request is simply that were you to lodge a complaint, we were not to access the road, but we were to attend to a nearby location which was not either threatening or inappropriate to you, then we would entirely accept that. And it's very helpful to have that flagged. And for what it's worth, if any other resident were to be concerned about us attending to their property in the event of a complaint and would like us not to attend or not to attend in immediate proximity, we would of course respect that. There is nothing about our operations that would want to cause you any undue distress, and we will take it away hereafter that were you to call, we would not be using your road or track in any way.
Thank you. I think that most of the questions have now been answered. Are there still some more hands going up? We've now fully debated this subject, and we will now. Pardon?
It's on now.
Right. Thank you. I think we're not here for a cross-examination, so we will now adjourn to discuss our recommendations. What is the time now? It's just gone 3:05. If we come back at 3:45. We are. Thank you for all coming back. This is the decision of the subcommittee. The subcommittee's decision is to grant the application with the conditions proposed and agreed with two of the responsible authorities, together with additional conditions considered appropriate by the subcommittee in respect of the following. A named single point of contact and contact telephone number will be publicised on the Nostock Limited website, so that local residents can report any noise issues or complaints directly to Nostock Limited. All calls will be logged by time, location and contact number. An address will be requested and will include details of any remedial action taken. The log will be kept on site and will be readily available at the request of a duly authorised council officer. The subcommittee would strongly advise that should the premises licence conditions not be complied with, the residents inform Nostock Limited and the appropriate responsible authority, for example the police, environmental health or licensing department, so that concerns are properly documented and evidenced. If conditions are not complied with or the premises are undermining one or more of the licensing objectives, members have the right to call for a review of the premises licence. A full decision notice with the conditions and reasons will be provided within 5 working days. And I now close the meeting at 10 to 4 and thank you.